In the opening scene of our tale, the battlefield unfolds like a grotesque tapestry of carnage. The earth, once vibrant and fertile, now lies ensnared in a sinister embrace of crimson, a testament to the savagery of conflict. Here, amidst the gruesome tableau, lies a haunting sight, a sea of lifeless bodies, twisted and contorted in the throes of death's embrace. Limbs akimbo, faces frozen in expressions of agony, they serve as silent witnesses to the brutality of war. In this surreal landscape of despair and destruction, the stage is set for our protagonist's journey, a journey fraught with peril, yet illuminated by the flickering spark of hope amidst the darkness. In the heart of the chaos, amidst the grim symphony of battle, Chung Myung, the 13th disciple of the revered Flowery Mountain Sect, regains consciousness. His senses reel with the acrid scent of blood and smoke, his body racked with searing pain from mortal wounds. As he struggles to focus through the haze of agony, his gaze falls upon a scene of unimaginable horror, the lifeless forms of his comrades in arms, esteemed masters, respected seniors, and promising juniors strewn about like discarded puppets on the macabre stage of war. Amidst the grim aftermath of battle, a sinister truth emerges. The architect of this bloodshed is none other than Chun Ma, the dreaded heavenly devil and leader of the nefarious heavenly demon sect. Yet Chun Ma himself lies on death's threshold, his once untouchable facade shattered by the ferocity of the conflict. Like a fallen titan, he teeters on the edge of oblivion, his fate entwined with those he sought to vanquish. As the dust settles and the echoes of war fade into the ether, Chun Ma is left to confront the bitter irony of his own mortality. As Chung Myung rises, defying the agony of his fatal wounds, a tense silence descends upon the battlefield. In a rare moment of acknowledgement, Chun Ma, though battered and on death's doorstep, pays homage to his adversary's unparalleled skill. He concedes to the mastery of the Flowery Mountain Sect's swordsmanship, declaring it unrivaled in its greatness. As Chung Myung surges forward, determination etched into every fiber of his being, Chun Ma's voice pierces the air with an ominous warning. With a chilling certainty, he foretells that this confrontation is but a prelude to a greater conflict yet to come, a harbinger of the demon's inevitable return. Despite the imminent threat of defeat, Chun Ma's words ring with an eerie prophecy, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the battlefield. With a final, thunderous swing of his sword, Chung Myung unleashes a torrent of unstoppable power, cleaving through steel and flesh. In a single, decisive stroke, Chun Ma's head is cleaved from his body, sent tumbling through the air to join the ranks of the fallen. His lifeless form steadfast atop a mountain of core, a grim testament to the inexorable march of fate. As the darkness fades and the sun peaks, slowly illuminating the battlefield, Chung Myung stands amidst the carnage, his chest heaving with the weight of victory and loss. With Chun Ma's demise, a chapter in the annals of history is brought to a close. As Chung Myung waits for his inevitable demise, he finds himself consumed by worry for the future of his clan. He can't help but wonder if a greater dedication to training could have spared at least one more life. These self-doubts weigh heavily on him, leading him to question the meaning of it all. As his resolve wanes and his weary body succumbs to exhaustion, Chung Myung starts his descent, surrendering to the inevitable embrace of death. Memories rush forth, a vivid montage of his life unfolds before his eyes, his humble beginnings as an abandoned babe, his adoption into the nurturing arms of the sect leader, the camaraderie forged through rigorous training with comrades, and the stern admonishments from his master, chastising him for resorting to brute force against his fellow disciples. In hindsight, Chung Myung reflects on his journey with a heavy heart, burdened by the weight of regret and disillusionment. Despite his status as a disciple, he grew weary of the rigidity of the sect's teachings, unable to fully conform to their expectations. His natural talents garnered him undeserved attention and praise, yet deep down, he knew himself to be nothing more than a novice, stumbling through the complexities of his role. Now, as he looks back on those tumultuous days, he curses himself for his naivety, for failing to recognize the truth of his own limitations. As an image of the sect leader emerges from the depths of his conscience, questioning the depths of his regret, Chung Myung's response is swift and resolute. With a heavy heart, he acknowledges the weight of his remorse, the burden of missed opportunities and unfulfilled potential. If only he had been more steadfast in his dedication to the teachings of the Flowery Mountain Sect, If only he had pushed himself to become stronger, he laments. Perhaps he could have altered the course of fate, but there is no need to regret as the Flowery Mountain Sect will continue. As the vibrant hues of dawn kissed the Flowery Mountain Sect, a serene tapestry unfolded. Nestled among the peaks adorned with delicate pink blossoms and emerald foliage, the sect seemed like a painting come to life. With each breath of the crisp mountain air, memories of Chung Myung gently faded into the ether, replaced by the tranquil beauty of the present moment. Against the canvas of a pristine blue sky, the sect stood as a testament to nature's enduring grace, a sanctuary where the past dissolved into the ever-flowing stream of time. As Chung Myung is abruptly awakened by Wang Cho, a beggar child who chastises him for sleeping in, he receives a stinging reminder in the form of bamboo sword strikes to his head. Sitting at the water's edge, Chung Myung winces with pain, his mind replaying the brutal punishment he endured. Never before, even in the Flowery Sect, had he been beaten so badly. Anger simmers within him as he recalls the audacious Wang Cho and vows to hand out punishment to the beggars. But as his body trembles with both anger and pain, he pauses, gazing at his reflection in the river. In that moment, a stark realization hits him. He now inhabits the body of a child. As he contemplates the possibility of reincarnation, he is approached by another child beggar that he saw earlier while getting beaten by Wang Cho. Chung Myung posed several questions, leaving the beggar a bit confused, but he nonetheless answered. Confirming that Chung Myung was now indeed a beggar, he pointed out that it was kind of obvious considering Chung Myung's attire. When Chung Myung asked about the name Chun Ma, the beggar explained that Chun Ma was known as the leader of the devil worshippers who died 100 years ago. This revelation left Chung Myung frozen in shock, realizing that over 100 years had passed since the great battle. Infuriated, Chung Myung questioned the beggar's honesty, but the beggar insisted that he had nothing to gain by lying about such events. Chung Myung lamented why his reincarnation had occurred so late. He wondered why it hadn't happened shortly after his death, leaving him feeling alone in the world. To his astonishment, Chung Myung learned that the once great Flowery Mountain Sect had long since crumbled, its glory faded into obscurity. The beggar had no recollection of ever hearing about such a sect. Instead, he listed the 10 great sects: the Shaolin Temple, Shaman Temple, Hazy Point Sect, Rugged Mountain Sect, Azure Castle, Steep Rift Sect, Northern Peninsula Sect, Loft Mountain Sect, the Beggars' Union, and the Northern Edge Sect. Stunned by the revelation, Chung Myung grapples with the truth that the Flowery Mountain Sect, once counted among the prestigious 10 great sects, no longer exists. He probes further, questioning if the Mount Hua Sect, another esteemed faction, remains among the elite. After a moment of contemplation, Chung Myung's fellow beggar recollects hearing about the Mount Hua Sect, but to his knowledge, it has indeed fallen. This confirmation deepens Chung Myung's sense of disbelief and shock at the fall of such renowned and powerful institutions. The revelation hits Chung Myung like a thunderbolt, leaving him reeling with disbelief. The Mount Hua Sect, once a stalwart pillar among the 3 most prominent sects in the world alongside the Shaman Temple and the Northern Loyal Family, now lies in ruins. It's a truth too surreal to comprehend, a testament to the inexorable march of time and the fragility of even the mightiest empires. Determined to verify the startling claims made by the child, Chung Myung resolves to seek out the truth with his own eyes. Ignoring the doubts gnawing at the edges of his mind, he presses the child for confirmation, demanding to know the name of his current vessel. After learning that the beggars do not have real names and are unaware of their own ages, Chung Myung assumed his age to be between 15 and 16. He then ordered the beggar to give his name, and the name of the beggar who had beaten him earlier. The beggar, surprised, asked if Chung Myung had truly forgotten everything. In response, Chung Myung reassured the beggar that he repays favors twofold and grudges tenfold. He instructed the beggar to remember the name Chung Myung, as the next time they meet, he would return today's favor. After learning the location of the Mount Hua Sect in Shaanxi Province, Chung Myung is determined to see its current condition for himself. However, he soon realizes that his current physical state is lacking as he quickly exhausts his stamina and tumbles to the ground, landing flat on his face. Unable to continue in his current condition, Chung Myung resolves to transform his greatest weakness into his greatest strength. With determination fueling his spirit, he has a brilliant idea: to teach himself martial arts. This decision marks the beginning of his journey to overcome his limitations and forge a new path for himself. After finding a secluded place where he could avoid physical contact with the world the most, Chung Myung contemplates his vast knowledge of advanced martial arts techniques and multiple methods of inner chi cultivation. If he doesn't limit himself to just the techniques of the Tumultuous sect, the amount he'll learn will easily multiply. Choosing to begin his journey by relearning the fundamental technique of equilibrium, Chung Myung recognizes its true value despite its initial dismissal as a cheap commodity in illegal street stores. He understands that beneath its seemingly lowly status lies a profound method for purifying the body and attaining inner balance. While the technique of equilibrium may not directly enhance one's inner chi strength, its importance lies in its ability to thoroughly cleanse the body. As a fundamental technique, it serves as a crucial foundation for cultivating inner purity and balance. This is where it all begins. He delves into the meticulous process of purifying the energy absorbed from his surroundings. It's akin to repairing a minor misalignment in a vast fabric, meticulously attending to each strand with precision and care. Chung Myung successfully gathers the purified energy into his dantian, while contemplating that this will be the foundation that will open a whole new world for him. However, his mortal body still lacks substance. Drained of vitality, he reluctantly took to the streets in search of sustenance. However, his endeavors were met with disdain by his fellow beggars, who grumbled to their leader about Chung Myung's audacious monopoly on their scarce human resources. Midway through his meal, Chung Myung found himself rudely interrupted by a band of ruffians. With menacing glares, they demanded he surrender all he possessed, promising his survival in exchange for his meager belongings, including the food he had been eagerly consuming. After diligently mastering the equilibrium technique and nurturing a fledgling dantian within, albeit still in its infancy, Chung Myung effortlessly bested his adversaries. The once boastful men now knelt before him, their bravado replaced by bruises and humility. In the presence of Chung Myung's newfound power, they could only cower, their voices trembling with respect as they addressed him. Having extracted valuable information and delivered a final warning to his fellow beggars, Chung Myung watched as they scattered in fear. In the hushed embrace of dawn, the mountain peaks emerged from veils of mist, their verdant attire gleaming under the tentative touch of the rising sun. As the golden rays delicately traced the contours of the valleys, a gentle dance unfolded, dispelling the lingering fog with the promise of warmth. Nature, in its quiet splendor, orchestrated a symphony of light and shadow, casting a spell that whispered of renewal and transformation. With each passing moment, the landscape unveiled its secrets, inviting weary souls to surrender to the embrace of a new day. Chung Myung rushed to the Tumultuous sect where he was introduced to the sect leader. He respectfully introduced himself to the current head of the Flowery Mountain Sect and expressed his earnest desire to join the ranks of the Tumultuous sect. Chung Myung usually has a carefree nature and enjoys fooling around. However, when he has a goal, he sets his mind to it. Even though Chung Myung greets the head with a smile, we learn that they were not allowing anyone to join the sect anymore. Furthermore, behind his innocent smile, Chung Myung is revealed to be pissed off. In a revealing flashback, we discover that the information gleaned from the reluctant beggars hinted at a shortcut, promising a swift journey. However, the reality proved far from advantageous, as the purported shortcut was indeed a treacherous path. After persevering through the endless hardships to reach his destination, scaling seemingly endless flights of stairs and navigating treacherous mountain terrain, he finally reached his destination. Welcomed by Unam and granted entry into the premises, Chung Myung couldn't help but notice the stark changes that had befallen the once grand Tumultuous sect. Where once stood opulent floors of polished marble now lay nothing but bare earth, and the heavenly golden palace was conspicuously absent from its rightful place. Despite his initial shock, Chung Myung's discerning gaze soon grasped the truth behind the transformations. Realizing that the current leaders were not to blame, he empathized with the challenges they must have faced in preserving the sect from the brink of extinction. As Chung Myung stepped into the hallowed halls of the Yiyuan Temple, he couldn't shake the sinking feeling in his chest. Despite the temple's apparent preservation, the absence of cherished relics and ancient artifacts was glaringly apparent. Gone were the golden candlesticks, bestowed upon their ancestor Daetonghak by the Jin Dynasty Emperor, and the revered hanging scroll, meticulously crafted by the same revered forebear. The once adorned walls now stood bare, stripped of their opulent gold plating decorations and the vibrant paintings that once breathed life into the sacred space. Chung Myung's heart weighed heavily with the loss of these irreplaceable treasures, a testament to the tumultuous history that had befallen the Mount Hua sect. With a heavy heart, Chung Myung dared to voice his concern over the conspicuous absence of one of the sect's most revered artifacts, the Plum Blossom flower, crafted from an enigmatic white metal. To his dismay, Unam's nonchalant response cut through the air like a dagger. The treasured relic had been callously sold to a passing merchant, deemed useless in the eyes of those who now held sway over the sect's destiny. Shocked and disheartened by the revelation, Chung Myung struggled to reconcile the sacrilege committed against the sect's heritage. Returning to the present, Chung Myung, with earnest determination, beseeched the sect leader for acceptance into the fold. To his astonishment, the leader's response was one of unexpected generosity. With a gentle smile, the leader expressed their belief that the sect should not turn away any soul seeking refuge, likening them to birds seeking shelter. How could they, then, refuse entry to a child so earnestly seeking to join their ranks? Following the leader's decree, the old man instructed Unam to arrange accommodations for Chung Myung and prepare him for the upcoming entrance ceremony. Donning the uniform of a third-rank disciple, Chung Myung couldn't help but lament how he had fallen. To think that he, once brimming with promise and potential, now found himself clad in the attire of a novice disciple. Turning his attention to the room before him, Chung Myung's gaze swept across the space. A wave of nostalgia washed over him. Despite its current designation, he couldn't shake the memory of its former grandeur as a guest room in times gone by. Deciding to sneak about and explore, he immediately gets into trouble as another student mistakes him as a thief. As Gul's voice rose in anger, echoing through the boarding house, the commotion drew the attention of other disciples, who began to gather around, their curiosity piqued. But just as tensions threatened to escalate, a commanding presence filled the room as their teacher, Sasek, materialized before them. With a stern gaze, Sasek admonishes the unruly disciples, his voice cutting through the din with authority. Upon Sasek's inquiry about the newcomer, Chung Myung stepped forward and respectfully introduced himself. Sasek tells him that since it is already late, he should get some rest so he can participate in tomorrow's training. As the students and teacher began to disperse, Gul cast a lingering glare back at Chung Myung, his eyes alight with a vengeful gleam, and with a menacing promise hanging in the air, Gul vowed to deliver a reckoning upon Chung Myung. Chung Myung, however, remained unperturbed by the brewing conflict. Instead, he couldn't help but chuckle inwardly, seeing the potential in these young disciples as his future successors. With a mischievous smile, Chung Myung resolved to give them the attention they craved, albeit in his own unorthodox way. The next day dawned with Gul's attempt to assert his seniority, his demeanor dripping with arrogance as he sought to belittle Chung Myung. With a haughty sneer, Gul issued a demeaning command, ordering Chung Myung to strip and perform humiliating acts, all under the guise of fostering camaraderie among men. Unfazed by Gul's attempts to assert dominance, Chung Myung remained calm and collected. Sensing an opportunity, he inquired about Sasek's whereabouts, seizing the moment to take control of the situation. As Gul confirmed Sasek's absence, Chung Myung's plan swiftly unfolded. With a cunning glint in his eye, Chung Myung instructed Gul to flex his neck, catching his adversary off guard. Before Gul could react, Chung Myung's fist connected with lightning speed, sending Gul soaring upward with a resounding impact. As Gul's minions witnessed their leader's sudden defeat, their mouths fell open in astonishment, their eyes widening in disbelief. With a sinister glint in his eye, Chung Myung clenched his fist, his resolve hardening as he prepared to dish out justice to Gul's remaining minions. The once defiant disciples now lay prostrate before Chung Myung, their bodies battered and spirits broken. With a commanding presence, Chung Myung surveyed the scene before him, his authority unchallenged. Turning his attention to Sayoung-jang, the eldest among them, Chung Myung issued a directive. "Sayoung-jang," he said, with a casual tone, "put a little more effort into the massage." He then summons Gul to step forward, while reassuring Ghoul that he has no intentions of harming him. Chung Myung then explained that he is still not familiar with the situation in the sect, so he had a few questions for him. Chung Myung asks what happened to the Heavenly Golden Palace, and why the Mount Hua sect is in such a state. As Ghoul stepped forward to respond to Chung Myung's inquiry, he explained the dire situation facing the Mount Hua sect. According to information provided by Sasek, the Plum Blossom Sword Saint had indeed played a pivotal role in vanquishing Chun Ma, a formidable foe. However, following the conclusion of the battle, an unexpected calamity befell the sect. Ghoul recounted how the remnants of the demon sect, in a vengeful onslaught, descended upon Mount Hua and unleashed devastation upon the sacred mountain. Their malevolent forces set the entire mountain ablaze, leaving in their wake a trail of destruction from which the sect has yet to fully recover. As the dawn of a new day broke, Chung Myung found himself enveloped in memories of the past. Recollections of a brief encounter with his master, Saiyang Jang, surfaced in his mind, stirring a mixture of nostalgia and reflection. In that fleeting moment, Saiyang Jang had broached the topic of Chung Myung taking on disciples, a suggestion that hinted at the recognition of his potential as a teacher. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn as Chung Myung candidly shared his unorthodox approach to teaching, one that involved pushing his students to their limits, even to the brink of death, in pursuit of unlocking their full potential. The revelation had brought the conversation to an abrupt halt, and from that day forward, Saiyang Jang never raised the topic again. In the midst of his reflections, Chung Myung's reverie was interrupted by the respectful summons of Saiyang, who explained that the boarding house advisor Ngum summoned him to the training grounds. As Chung Myung arrived at the training grounds, he was greeted by the sight of children practicing unfamiliar sword techniques. Perplexed by the techniques he had never encountered before, Chung Myung approached Ngum, the boarding house advisor, seeking clarification. In response to Chung Myung's inquiry, Ngum explained that the technique being taught was none other than the equilibrium sword technique, a foundational method of swordplay within the Mount Hua sect. Shocked by the unconventional approach to training, Chung Myung felt a surge of frustration welling within him. To him, teaching the equilibrium sword technique to novices was akin to attempting to teach the alphabet using complex thesis books. It simply didn't make sense. With determination fueling his actions, Chung Myung stepped onto the training ground, his sword at the ready. As he observed the students struggling to grasp the intricate techniques, he couldn't help but shake his head in disbelief. This method of training might yield temporary progress, but without a solid foundation in the fundamentals, it would ultimately lead to stagnation and frustration. As Chung Myung gazed up at the expanse of the beautiful blue sky, a poignant analogy began to form in his mind. The clear, cloudless sky stretched endlessly, seemingly infinite in its vastness, much like the uncertainty that shrouded the future of the Mount Hua sect. In that boundless expanse, Chung Myung saw a reflection of the nothingness that loomed ahead for the sect, a future devoid of direction or clarity. With a commanding voice, Chung Myung called out to Saiyang, his inquiry echoing across the training grounds. As Saiyang stepped forward to respond, Chung Myung listened intently as Saiyang explained the various techniques being taught, including the Tai Flummox sword technique. However, as Saiyang elaborated on the technique, Chung Myung sighed heavily as memories from the past flooded his mind. He recalled a time when he and his master had deemed the Tai Flummox sword technique lacking in Taoistic principles and power, dismissing it as unworthy of further consideration. They had concluded that the technique was nothing more than trash, unfit to be retained. Yet, as he returned to the present moment, his shock was palpable. The realization dawned upon him that his previous assessment had been disregarded. As night falls upon the jagged peaks of Mount Hua, a tranquil hush descends upon the ancient sect nestled amidst the craggy terrain. The moonlight casting a soft, ethereal glow upon the rugged landscape. Silence becomes palpable as if the mountain itself holds its breath, waiting for the veil of night to envelop its secrets. As Saiyang attempted to navigate the hall with caution, hoping to evade the presence of their formidable new junior, Chung Myung's sudden appearance caught him off guard. With a dumb expression, Chung Myung beckoned Saiyang over, his demeanor relaxed yet purposeful. Chung Myung explained he had a favor to ask of him. And as Saiyang listened to Chung Myung's words, a sense of curiosity mingled with apprehension, uncertain of what lay ahead. Taking decisive action, Chung Myung instructed Young to gather all the students early the next morning at the training grounds. With a determined expression, he outlined his plan, directing Young to prepare a specific set of items, 5 per person, to be exact. Seemingly sensing Young's hesitance, Chung Myung paused for a moment before inquiring if the task would be too much for him. With a hint of trepidation, Young tentatively disagreed, acknowledging that the task would be done. However, instead of dwelling on Young's uncertainty, Chung Myung offered words of encouragement, praising his enthusiasm and dedication to the task at hand. With a reassuring smile, he urged Young to proceed with confidence, confident in his ability to carry out the instructions given. Currently, in the Malevolent sect, they have neither wealth, technique, nor talent. And as such, it would not be a surprise if the sect collapsed overnight. However, out of these 3, the one thing Chung Myung believes he can control is talent. The current disciples did not seem to be very talented, but they did say that a 1,000-mile journey starts with a single step, and molding these disciples into formidable warriors would be his first step. As the disciples gathered early in the morning as instructed, murmurs of discontent rippled through the crowd, particularly among the seniors who were not pleased with the unexpected summons. Their grumbles and protests echoed through the training grounds, voicing their concerns about the disruption of their routine and the imposition of early training. With a firm resolve, Chung Myung swiftly took action, gathering those disciples who were causing a disturbance and coercing them into the boarding house. As they entered, the atmosphere grew tense, and the once quiet building began to shake violently, echoing with the muffled sounds of their protests and screams. As they stood at attention before Chung Myung, a sense of dread washed over them, cold sweat trickling down their cheeks. Chung Myung, with a commanding presence, urged them to quiet down to avoid waking Sasek. With unwavering resolve, he declared that from that moment on, they would train together every morning at the same time. As the night reluctantly yielded to the dawn, the world held its breath in anticipation. Between 2 towering sentinels of stone, the mountains, stood a valley lush with life, a hidden sanctuary untouched by time. As the first tendrils of light stretched across the horizon, the mountains leaned in, as if sharing a secret. Between their ancient peaks, a gap emerged, a gateway to the heavens. Through this natural amphitheater, the sun emerged, its fiery crown rising with majestic poise. Sasek awoke with doubts as he immediately realized his students did not present him with their usual morning greetings, which leads him to believe everyone has decided to slack off, or maybe they were still asleep because they are tired after participating in the rite of passage. Either way, he would have to teach them a proper lesson for this lazy action, and so he prepares and heads out to greet them. Arriving at the training grounds, Chung Myung was met with a disheartening sight. The students lay exhausted on the ground, some even pleading for relief. Suzuk's concern deepened as his inquiries met only fearful silence from his students. Even the formidable Jo Ghoul appeared battered and bruised, a mere shadow of his former self. Yet, what truly shocked him was the sight of Chung Myung, leading by example amidst the grueling training. With unwavering determination, Chung Myung continued his torturous regimen, lifting oversized boulders with each breath, demonstrating a resilience that inspired awe in those around him. 10,085! Chung Myung exclaimed, his voice strained with exhaustion as sweat drenched his body. Finally noticing Sasek's presence, Chung Myung paused, panting heavily, and locked eyes with his mentor. Sasek stood frozen in shock, gazing up at Chung Myung with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Observing Chung Myung's extensive training and the toll it had taken on his body, Sasek noted the trembling in his disciple's legs, a testament to the relentless pursuit of strength and mastery. Sasek wasted no time, urging someone to bring water for the exhausted disciple. As Chung Myung quenched his thirst, Sasek's gaze shifted to the dramatic scene unfolding before them, prompting him to turn to Chung Myung for an explanation. With a casual laugh, Chung Myung dismissed the scene as nothing more than a morning exercise session that had gotten a bit out of hand due to everyone's enthusiasm on the first day. Sasek mulled over Chung Myung's explanation, though a few disciples attempted to signal to him not to trust Chung Myung's words. Chung Myung's death stare sent shivers down their spines, leaving them drenched in cold sweat, realizing the weight of his silent warning. As Sasek observed their fear of Chung Myung, he couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity, turning towards Chung Myung with a questioning gaze. Reflecting on the sight of his young disciples cowering before a newcomer despite being disciples of the esteemed tumultuous sect, Sasek resolved that a warning to Chung Myung was in order. Sasek firmly scolded Chung Myung for acting independently, anticipating resistance. However, to his surprise, Chung Myung responded with agreement, saying, "Then I'll stop." This unexpected reply prompted Sasek to consider reprimanding Chung Myung for threatening his seniors. Yet, as he beheld Chung Myung's innocent demeanor, any thought of further scolding dissipated, disarmed by the young disciple's charm. Lost in contemplation about his disciples, whom he referred to as a bunch of idiots in his inner thoughts, Chung Myung decided to break the ice. He turned to Sasek and made a request: 1 month. Chung Myung promised to deliver results within this time frame, seeking the great Sasek's trust and support in his endeavor. Chung Myung proceeded to commend his colleagues' determination, emphasizing that not a single one of them had complained despite the rigorous training session. However, Sasek couldn't help but notice the underlying implication: their silence stemmed from fear of Chung Myung. Glancing at his disciples, Sasek speculated that perhaps Chung Myung actually meant to say that no one dared to complain to him. Pondering the origins of this peculiar young man, Sasek found himself intrigued by the enigma that was Chung Myung. Sasek, intrigued by Chung Myung's motivations, questioned the young disciple's commitment, pointing out that this endeavor would also be a rigorous task for him. Chung Myung, while buttering his words and referring to his teacher as the great Sasek, explained that his goal was to achieve even greater strength. Sasek, sensing an opportunity for insight, posed another question, seeking clarity on Chung Myung's priorities when training his colleagues. To this Chung Myung replied courtesy: he will regard the leader's word as law, akin to the skies, meaning he won't look down on his seniors, but rather keep his courtesy towards them to maintain the hierarchy. Satisfied with Chung Myung's responses, Sasek's face broke into a smile of approval. Turning towards his young disciples, he delivered a motivational speech, praising their willingness to volunteer for the early morning training. Encouraging them to persist, Sasek assured them that their dedication would lead to great success. With his blessing, he permitted them to continue their training endeavors. Contrary to their hopes, Sasek's praise was not what they had been yearning for. They didn't seek accolades. Rather, they longed for his intervention to alleviate their suffering. Before they could voice their concerns, the great Sasek promptly took his leave, leaving them to grapple with their predicament. For Chung Myung, however, this turn of events was a victory. Massaging his fist in his palm, he urged his companions to accompany him to the boarding house for a quick chat. As a few days passed, Chung Myung observed the slow but steady assimilation of his small and feeble dantian. Alongside this progress, he delved deeper into the workings of the sect. Discovering that the boarding house functioned as a private dormitory, he also gleaned insights into the strength of the sect's leadership. Realizing that the sect leader and his 2 disciples were weak, their strength paled in comparison to the tumultuous sect of 100 years ago, Chung Myung understood the root of the problem. With such feeble leadership, it was no wonder that their disciples remained terribly weak. With unwavering determination, the great Chung Myung vowed to transform the sect into the strongest force in the land. Gathering in the lunch hall for their meal, the students struggled to feed themselves, their hands trembling with fatigue from rigorous training. Frustration boiled over as one student voiced his complaint, arguing that their training should not be so extreme that they couldn't even manage to eat properly. In a moment of desperation, he turned to Sayang Jo-gul, pleading for him to confront Chung Myung about their current predicament. However, to their surprise, Jo-gul scolded them for their chatter and questioned if they took him for an errand boy. Reminding them that Chung Myung was not avoiding anyone, he encouraged them to approach Chung Myung directly if they had concerns. After expressing his thoughts, Jo-gul rose to leave, extending an invitation to Sayang to join him. Beneath the pink blossom trees, Jo-gul caught his senior off guard with a question about the tumultuous sect. His senior hesitated, finding it a difficult question to answer. Jo-gul then pointed out the difference in their situations. For him, returning to his hometown would signify the end, but for Sayang, wasn't he planning to spend his entire life here? Beneath the serene glow of the moonlit sky, They both paused in contemplation. Joe Ghoul expressed his initial belief that the sect was finished, prompting Young to caution him against disrespect. However, Joe Ghoul confessed that his perspective had shifted since Chung Myung's arrival. Acknowledging that he had never pushed himself to such limits before, Joe Ghoul marveled at Chung Myung's resilience. Despite training far more intensely than the rest, Chung Myung never showed a hint of exhaustion. This realization sparked a newfound respect for Chung Myung's dedication within Joe Ghoul. With a newfound determination in his eyes, Joe Ghoul informed Young of his resolve. He expressed his determination to redouble his efforts in training, aspiring to one day become a master capable of leading the world. Unnoticed by the two below, Chung Myung perches atop a tree, silently listening to their conversation. As Young confirms that he shares the same lofty goals as Joe Ghoul, a satisfied smile creeps across Chung Myung's face. Content with his success in winning over two disciples, Chung Myung settles back into a relaxed position, basking in the glow of the moonlight and his accomplishment. Amidst the tranquility, sudden commotion erupted at the gate. Loud bangs reverberated through the air, accompanied by shouts, before the doors were forcefully kicked open, revealing before them a group of angry, gold-digging-looking old geezers, demanding an audience with the elder. Instead, they were met by the elder's two disciples, who tried their best to suck up to these men in hopes of de-escalating the situation. Chung Myung watched in utter shock as the audacious men brazenly breached the gates of the Mount Hua sect. Their bold intrusion took a startling turn as they revealed their purpose. They were debt collectors. The revelation struck like a bolt of lightning, adding another layer of adversity to the already precarious situation of the Mount Hua sect. Not only were they grappling with their current circumstances, but now they also found themselves burdened by debt. As the debt collectors, revealed to be merchants who had extended loans to the Mount Hua sect, pressed further into the temple, Unam and Ngum attempted to intercede. However, their efforts proved futile as the merchants steadfastly advanced towards the sect leader's quarters. Beaching the sect leader to emerge from hiding, they demanded his presence. Reluctantly, the sect leader complied, stepping forward with an imposing demeanor. Chung Myung observed from the sidelines, noting the leader's sophisticated aura, evident in every step and word he uttered. Chung Myung's initial admiration swiftly dissipated as he witnessed the sect leader's demeanor falter in the face of inquiry about his tardy repayment. The transition from a facade of grandeur to one of pitiful submission was palpable. As tension filled the air, the owner of the Taihua Pavilion, Kong, stepped forward with a respectful greeting. He expressed his discomfort at having to visit under such circumstances, but acknowledged the pressure from others to address the matter. With a fake, pleading tone, Kong begged the old man to understand the necessity of their visit. Kong elaborated on the people's repeated attempts to be understanding of the Mount Hua sect's predicament. However, he emphasized that adherents to the contract they could, if they so choose, demand payment for the overdue debt. Wearing a smug expression, Kong declared that due to the merchants' past indebtedness to the Mount Hua sect, they would exercise leniency. He granted them a 7-day grace period to settle their debts. Should they fail to do so, he warned, the temple would be confiscated as collateral. As the tension-filled scene unfolded, a suspicious sound shattered the silence, drawing the attention of everyone present. All eyes turned to the source of the interruption, revealing none other than Chung Myung. Later that night, Chung Myung summoned 2 of his minions, seeking a clearer understanding of the situation. He inquired if the men were indeed merchants from Huam Prefecture, to which his minions confirmed. Deep inside, Saji braced for what he anticipated would not be a favorable reaction from Chung Myung regarding this matter. Saji added that Kong was the owner of the Taihua Pavilion, the largest pavilion in Huam. Renowned as a wealthy merchant, Kong was involved in various business ventures across the region. Upon hearing Saji's explanation, Chung Myung questioned its validity, his expression darkening with fury. When his minions dared to suggest he calm down, Chung Myung's anger only intensified. In his eyes, the Taihua Pavilion rightfully belonged to the Mount Hua sect. He found it outrageous that Kong would attempt to confiscate the temple after extending loans to them. In a fit of rage, Chung Myung seized Saji by the collar, shouting a barrage of questions. To his dismay, Saji confirmed the validity of each inquiry. However, as quickly as his anger had flared, Chung Myung's demeanor shifted, replaced by a sense of puzzlement. He lamented that something didn't add up. It struck him as odd that the Taihua Pavilion, originally belonging to the Malevolent sect, would be the one extending loans to them. As Chung Myung voiced his doubts aloud, a sense of perplexity gripped him. Something was amiss. Summoning Joe Ghoul, he noted the fear in his response. Chung Myung wasted no time, instructing him to fetch that thing they had discussed earlier. Confused, Joe Ghoul sought clarification, earning a sharp edge to Chung Myung's tone. Realizing the urgency, Joe Ghoul swiftly departed, understanding Chung Myung's intent, and vowed to return promptly with the requested item. After a brief interval, Joe Ghoul returned, presenting Chung Myung with the requested item. His words stumbled as he inquired about Chung Myung's intentions for said item. With swift determination, Chung Myung donned the new attire, imparting words of wisdom as he did. "There's a saying in Buddhist literature," he began. "Kill a Buddha, kill your forefather." He clarified the meaning behind the cryptic phrase, emphasizing the need to abandon attachments that hinder one's path, regardless of their nature. He continued, "To truly achieve the way of the Tao, you must learn to violate the way of the Tao." With this philosophical insight, Chung Myung completed his transformation into his hilarious ninja disguise. His minions cried out in dismay at the sight, questioning his destination in such attire, and dubbing him a crazy bastard. Their worst fears materialized as Chung Myung resolved to disguise himself and venture forth to meet with the merchants. He arrived atop a hill, overlooking a picturesque town illuminated by the soft glow of the moonlight. Amidst the tranquility, one building stood out, exuding an air of opulence that surpassed its neighbors. Despite the peaceful ambience, loud laughter and jubilation emanated from within this particular establishment. Among the numerous guests, the merchant group held court, their discussion tinged with mockery as they recounted their recent visit to the Malevolent sect. One of the merchants inquired about the amount to be collected, suggesting a sum exceeding 100,000 niang. He then turned to Kong, offering words of praise for his presence during their visit to the sect. Kong, assuming an air of sincerity, expressed lamentation over his actions, stating that although he was a profit-seeking merchant, he derived no joy from the situation due to the fact that the Malevolent sect had enjoyed a positive relationship with them for many generations. However, Kong's apparent moral dilemma was promptly lauded by one of his bootlickers, who commends him for repeatedly overlooking the sect's late repayment, and assures Kong that his actions will undoubtedly earn him praise from everyone involved. Internally, Kong berates his bootlicker's carefree and simple-minded demeanor. He believes that the power of the sect should not be underestimated. The true strength of the Malevolent sect lies not in its combat prowess but in its rich history. In Shaanxi province, it would be difficult to find someone without any connection to the Malevolent sect. However, Kong acknowledges that their current weakness is palpable, likening it to the tenderness of a baked duck whose skin tears easily with minimal force. His contemplations are interrupted by another drunken bootlicker who expresses curiosity about Kong's plans for the temple after confiscation. The bootlicker suggests that finding a buyer for the old temple would be challenging and proposes seizing something else of value from the sect instead. Kong, however, perceives the true value of the temple, recognizing that its significance extends far beyond what meets the eye. Despite its appearance as an old temple, its value is immeasurable. His bootlickers, however, fail to grasp this concept, frustrating Kong as he inwardly curses them, deeming them idiots. With a sly expression, Kong elaborates that they can leverage the enemies of the sect to their advantage. Many rival sects would eagerly pay large sums of money to purchase the Mount Hua temple simply to erase its existence. Thus, he reassures them that they need not worry, as he will ensure everyone recoups their money. To his surprise, one particularly enthusiastic bootlicker erupts with excitement, praising Kong as a wise man before raising a toast in his honor. The merchant who was a part of the meeting struggles to stay upright as he staggers through the moonlit streets, contemplating the potential jackpot awaiting him if he collects the money owed by the sect. He marvels at the brightness of the moon, only to realize there is no moon in the sky. It must be a new moon, he muses, cautioning himself against walking through the main streets at night. In the distance, he notices a blurry figure and attempts to focus his vision. As he stops and squints, he discerns someone standing there, dressed in an odd outfit. Chung Myung casually orders the drunk merchant to halt, prompting the merchant to wonder if Chung Myung is a burglar. After all, his appearance resembles a character straight out of a drawing. He's small, and his attire practically screams burglar. The merchant inquired if Chung Myung was a burglar, to which Chung Myung responded by reassuring him that he had no interest in money and urged the merchant to simply answer his questions, promising to let him go unharmed. However, the merchant's hidden bodyguards swiftly stepped forward and he explained they don't ever let him walk alone. As Chung Myung observed the guards, he contemplated their level of skill. Meanwhile, they strategized among themselves, deciding to capture him but ensuring he remained conscious for interrogation, noting his distaste for violent scenes, and his men swiftly rushed into action. The merchant, with his eyes closed and back turned, listened intently to the scuffle, sensing the intensity of the fight. He began to wonder if the sounds of battle were a bit too forceful. Suddenly, a loud crash pierced the air, prompting him to swiftly turn around. To his amazement, Chung Myung stood there effortlessly, holding one bodyguard aloft while the rest lay defeated and unconscious at his feet. He tossed the bodyguard to the ground with a sigh, lamenting the lack of politeness and listening skills in people. Then, turning his attention to the merchant, Chung Myung called him over with a tone that resembled calling a well-trained dog and recounting his earlier offer to let the merchant go unharmed if he answered his questions. Chung Myung grabbed him by the collar and clenched his fist while he explained that had the merchant cooperated earlier, he would have kept his word. However, since the merchant chose to fight, he now faced the consequences, and with a menacing glare, Chung Myung assured the trembling merchant that he would ensure he could still talk after his punishment. After a slight, well-deserved beating, the merchant struggled to talk but nevertheless divulged all the merchant's secrets. Chung Myung warned the merchant to fix his pronunciation, referring to him as a drama queen, to which he quickly and fearfully complied despite his swollen lips and puffed cheeks. Chung Myung learns that they lent over 100,000 niangs to the sect and sighs heavily before deducing that should he sell all the merchant possessed down to his underwear, there's no way he'd manage 10,000 niangs, let alone 100,000, yet the merchant claimed he loaned 100,000 niangs to the sect, which is now on the verge of collapsing. The piggy hurriedly informs Chung Myung that he could explain, stating that's just how high interest rates work. If they loan money at a high rate, as long as they don't pay it off, the interest keeps getting higher, and with a little time, the interest would become incomparably higher than the principal. The merchant chuckles, and with a proud tone, he tries to continue, not realizing Chung Myung trembled with anger, before suddenly he starts beating the smirk from his thoughts. This high interest rate scheme was not something to be proud of. Chung Myung inquired if he had also claimed to be the owner of the fabric shop, which he politely confirmed, leading Chung Myung to further inquire about the date on which he purchased the shop. This question left him confused, as their family had owned the fabric shop for generations. Internally, Chung Myung couldn't believe it. The Hwaam fabric shop, among all the best businesses in the Hwaam prefecture, belonged to the sect. They had left the management to stand in as representatives, but they must have taken over while the sect was on the verge of collapsing. With this realization, Chung Myung continued his relentless beating of the merchant. Suddenly, one of the beaten guards got up and started spouting rubbish about his reputation and wanting to know the names of those who would die by his hand. Chung Myung, surprised by his audacity, inquired if he had forgotten being knocked out a few moments ago. Infuriated by his words, the guard rushed at Chung Myung. Internally, Chung Myung noted that in terms of pure strength, this guard was stronger, be it inner strength, physical strength, or speed, he pales in comparison. But does that make him weaker than the guard? Absolutely not. With a flick of the sword at his feet, Chung Myung armed himself and deftly blocked the bodyguard's attack, leaving him shocked. Drawing from his past life as the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, Chung Myung had the advantage of experience. If he lacked strength, he could borrow it from his opponent. Using the bodyguard's momentum against him, Chung Myung executed a powerful counterattack, damaging the guard's hand and sending him flying backwards. Maintaining a composed and confident stance, Chung Myung pressed forward with a follow-up attack, urging the bodyguard to return after he had improved through training. Until then, he should remain on the floor, knowing his place. Chung Myung worried that the merchant would discern his techniques and deduce his identity, especially after the merchant exclaimed in awe at his polished and beautiful sword technique, the high level of martial arts displayed, and the faintly emitting pure chi he had sensed. To his surprise, Chung Myung learned that a lowly merchant like him could sense his chi. When the merchant inquired if he was from the Southern Edge sect, Chung Myung immediately falsely affirmed this to be true. With this confirmation, the merchant immediately started simping hard, urging Chung Myung to ask any question, promising to answer to the best of his abilities. Back at the temple, Chung Myung's minion Jo Gul impatiently awaited his return, prompting his senior to remind him that Chung Myung was not an idiot and that he would be back sooner or later as long as he didn't get into trouble. Suddenly, the doors swung open, and Chung Myung stepped forward, inquiring if there were any noteworthy changes as he swiftly changed into his proper clothing. He recalled the merchant mistaking his origin to be from the Southern Edge sect and thought it's good that he was not recognized, but it still left a bitter taste in his mouth. The Plum Blossom Sword techniques were lost, so it was no longer the symbol of the tumultuous sect anymore. Even so, to think that the merchant Jiang Sang-yu, who had lived his entire life in the Huam prefecture, could not associate the sword technique with the tumultuous sect was surprising. Chung Myung's thoughts were interrupted by Jo Gul's questioning his actions outside, but he gave a cryptic reply, reassuring them that it's not something a child should know. They took note of the term child, as he was also a child, and he ignored the topic while issuing the order to gather everyone for training. Confused about training at first, Jo Gul voiced his concerns, prompting Chung Myung to reaffirm their resolve to training, which got Jo Gul fired up, only to be quickly disappointed as Chung Myung would not be joining their training session. Chung Myung lay in bed, pondering the current situation. The standing representatives had taken over the businesses, while the vital records verifying the sect's ownership were reduced to ashes in the inferno ignited by the demon sect at Mount Hua. He entertained the option of simply eliminating the merchants, but pushed the thought aside. If he did, everyone would think the sect pushed a small child into wrongdoing. Instead, what he needed was an excuse for the tumultuous sect to evade repayment to the merchants, and evidence to prove that the businesses were originally owned by the sect. However, finding the excuse and evidence was easier said than done. Chung Myung drifted into memories of times past when the account books were frequently updated by Jang Mun. More importantly, any time he would appear unannounced, Jang Mun would promptly hide a few volumes of the account books. Suddenly, he had an epiphany. Were there only a few volumes? There must have been more hidden somewhere else. After all, the sect managed numerous businesses. He concluded that these hidden volumes must be kept in the secret storage, accessible only to the sect leaders. He had heard rumors about such a storage, but if it existed, its entrance would likely be inside the sect leader's residence. Since the residence hadn't changed from the past and was located somewhere on Mount Hua, the storage must be hidden nearby. The hills behind the sect leader's residence seemed plausible, and if it was underground, it would be nearly impossible for anyone to find. With thrilling excitement building inside, Chung Myung resolved to embark on an unprecedented treasure hunt. He apologized to his ancestors for what he was about to do, but saving the sect was his top priority. Without hesitation, he exited through a window, ready to begin his quest. Later that night, a loud bang echoed through the mountain range as Chung Myung plummeted to the ground, exclaiming, "Oh my, I'm going to die!" He lamented the vastness of the mountain, realizing that searching the entire area would be an arduous task, even with the use of his energy as a search tool. Gathering his energy, he directed it into the earth, creating a sonar-like ripple effect. He hoped that if the energy encountered a large empty space, it would indicate the presence of the storage room. After hours of repeating this technique, he collapsed to the ground exhausted, with no results. He contemplated giving up, thinking that perhaps he was wrong and the storage room wasn't in the mountains after all. However, having already invested so much time and effort, he decided to try just one more time. With determination, he focused his energy once more, and after several attempts, he finally detected an empty space. An expression of bewilderment crossed his face as he realized he had found what he was looking for. He thinks to himself that he finally found it, and reaching for his pickaxe, "It's now time to dig," as he can only be sure after confirming with his own eyes. A few swings of the pickaxe later, he finally reached a solid brick structure, and the thought dawned upon him: if this really is the Mount Hua secret storage, then all of the accounting books and treasures should be there. Thinking the structure might not be pure brick, he searches the blocks until he finds one that could easily be removed and peeks through the opening to discover the hallway that leads to the storage. However, to his bewilderment, he hears footsteps steadily approaching and is further shocked to realize it is none other than the sect leader. So, he knows about the hidden safe? As Chung Myung observed the sect leader standing before the door, he noticed a sense of helplessness and despair emanating from him. It became clear to Chung Myung that the old man wasn't trying to open the door. Instead, he was simply lost in contemplation, facing the grim reality of the Mount Hua sect's decline. The weight of leading Mount Hua through such turbulent times must indeed be overwhelming for the sect leader. Witnessing the collapse of the sect, the decline in martial arts practice, and the dwindling wealth would undoubtedly take a toll on anyone in his position. Chung Myung couldn't help but feel a sense of empathy for the sect leader, realizing the immense burden he carried and the challenges he faced in guiding the sect through its darkest hours. It's a profound struggle to witness the gradual decline of the place you've devoted your life to protecting, knowing you can't stop it. However, the old man is constrained from expressing these feelings openly, knowing that the disciples look up to him as a pillar of support. Thus, he carries the burden of his emotions silently, unable to share his pain with those who rely on him for strength. As the night's somber embrace gradually yields to the gentle touch of dawn, the melancholy moments also wane, eclipsed by the radiant ascent of the sun over the mountain. Its ascent seems to herald the imminent dawn of a new era for the Mount Hua sect, promising a rebirth from the ashes of adversity. Chung Myung enters the hallway through the entrance he created in the roof, the echo of his landing reverberating around him. Amidst the reverberations, his mind swirls with the acknowledgement of his past faults, yet he finds solace in the belief that redemption is still within reach. Standing before the imposing doors, he places his palm upon them, closes his eyes, and begins to focus his energy. With determination, he channels this energy throughout his body, directing it into the palm of his hands, ready to take the next step forward. A blue glow emanated, but to Chung Myung's surprise, his energy was swiftly repelled, pushing him backward amidst a powerful gust of wind and energy. Cold sweat trickled down his cheeks as he pondered the reason behind his failed attempt. This couldn't be the everlasting metal, he thought. The doors were at least 1 foot thick, and it seemed improbable that the secret storage would be constructed from the strongest metal in the world, rumored to be more valuable than gold. Such material would require the strength of the most formidable master to even make a dent in, let alone penetrate. This realization dawned on him. If even the sect leader hadn't attempted to open it, then the problem lay beyond mere physical strength. Even Chung Myung's formidable abilities were no match for this impenetrable barrier. He also noted that Jang Mun's level of martial arts wasn't high enough to cut through everlasting metal, indicating that there must be a way to open it. He simply needed to discover it. Suddenly, he noticed something peculiar about the patterns on the doors. They weren't just random designs but blade marks. Upon closer inspection, he recognized them as the 24-movement Plum Blossom Sword technique, interspersed with elements of the bamboo leaf sword technique, the Plum Blossom Sword technique, and the Equilibrium Sword technique. Realizing that these marks might hold the key to unlocking the doors, he recalled that it was the Violet Dawn that fortified Qi. If this was indeed the clue, then he needed to harness the energy of the Violet Dawn to proceed. He needs to precisely follow the marks, starting with the Equilibrium Sword technique, followed by the others, and finally ending with the Plum Blossom Sword dance. Chung Myung ponders how Jang Mun even created such a mechanism. While he has figured out the sequence, there's still one problem. How can he perform all those techniques? In his past life, it would have been easy, but as a child, applying inner strength to his blade and instantly performing those techniques is currently impossible. But there is a way that he would rather not resort to, and he has no other choice. He activates his dantian and turns a part of his energy into a red glow, knowing it will take about a month to recover from. With pristine focus, he ensures to use only a little, just a little, of the innate true Qi, something that everyone has had since birth, the energy that maintains life, or, in other words, his life force. Using this comes with consequences, but Chung Myung knows he has no other choice at the moment. His entire body, even his veins, surges with energy, and he gets enveloped in a pink aura, which slowly spreads to his wooden sword. He knows he only has one shot at this, and he must succeed with one try. He coughs up blood, causing him to question the likelihood of success, but it has to be possible. His body is just reacting strangely because it's not used to this kind of energy. With his steadfast resolve, he marches forward to the door and commences his sword arts. With each masterful swing of his blade, he coughs up more blood. It's heavy and difficult due to his body and inner strength limits, but with a firm grip and the slashing of his sword, he musters the resolve to continue no matter what. From the equilibrium sword to the bamboo leaf sword technique, then to the 24-movement Plum Blossom Sword technique, there must not be a single hesitation. This is the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. As he masterfully executed his sword techniques, the pink energy transfers to the door, illuminating several cores defined by the blade paths. But Chung Myung, exerting his own life force, suffers great damage. Evidently so, as he falls, coughing up a pool of blood, and slumps to the ground. He looks up at the door, wondering if it worked. It would be devastating if it did not open after such great efforts. For a moment that feels like an eternity, he remains slumped on his knees before the imposing door, surrounded by deadly silence. But alas, the silence was broken by the cracking sound of the door as it slowly opened, and the light beyond shone through, causing Chung Myung to forget his current state and shout in excitement. This immediate burst of energy had an adverse effect on his body, as he threw up more blood. Realizing his miscalculation, he acknowledges that he will likely be bedridden for at least 2 months, not 1. He struggles to his feet, inwardly lamenting that saving the Malevolent sect is such a pain. With newfound excitement, he wipes away the blood from his mouth, ready to uncover what Jang Mun has been hiding from him, and proceeds to make his way through the huge doors. Upon entering, he immediately notes that there are only 3 bookshelves and the inside is smaller than he had anticipated. He rationalizes that making a huge safe from everlasting metal was not feasible.